Good evening, everybody, and welcome to February's Masterclass with myself, Mrs. B, aka, Mel, aka Mrs. B, from Mrs. B's Book Nook, your guru reading, I want to say expert in the group. So, how have you all been? How is your reading going? How many of you have signed up for our reading challenge to read a book a month? So, read 12 books in a year. Read a book 12 books in 12 months. Who has signed up for that? And what is it that you are reading right now? Now, in my masterclasses prior to this, we've talked a lot about why we should read, why reading is important, the benefits of reading, whether it's to help with our mental health, it's to give us that time to create a calm space for ourselves, whether it's to help us develop empathy with other people. There's lots of reasons why, reading is something that we should be doing. We've also thought about how to make reading a consistent part of our lives, how to create it into a habit. And I've been thinking about this a lot over the last few weeks because I started the reading challenge and it was there to also help me, because I will admit that sometimes, I find it difficult to actually sit down and read. And since I started that challenge, I have found sitting down to read quite a challenge. I've had issues with my concentration, which doesn't help. But I just felt that I need something to help me create a time or to start to have something that signals to my brain that it's time to read, and to have a special time that I can say, this is my reading time and I'm dedicating this time to this, and this is how I'm going to set up my reading time. So I was thinking about what I could do. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I can pick a book up and I can read easily, but other times I need a little bit of help, a little bit of support with that. So I was looking at creating a reading ritual. Now, this sounds quite grand, doesn't it? It sounds like, I'm going to have the books and I'm going to burn them and do some kind of ritual with them, maybe like a little book dance or whatever. But it's not that at all. It's about, I would say it's developing a reading routine rather than a ritual. But that's what I saw that and I thought, oh, reading ritual. It made me think of all those things, but I'd say a reading routine. Okay. And I think it's having that routine where you are setting yourself those intentional habits that prepare your mind, prepare your body for for reading. Okay, so that actually it's a bit like a bedtime routine for our children. We have the bath time, we have the story time, and it signals to the children's bodies and to their minds, this is now time when I'm getting ready to go to sleep. And this is the same kind of thing. It's having that routine where we actually say to ourselves, we say to our minds, we say to our bodies, this is now going to be my reading time. This is going to be my time when I can sit and immerse myself in whatever book that I am reading at the moment. So it actually signals to our brains that it's time to unwind and focus on our books, focus on what we are reading. So there are some points to think about for this. So I'm going to go through them. Okay. So first of all, it's thinking about setting the mood. So actually thinking about where you're actually going to read, could be, creating a cozy, inviting atmosphere. Do you like to read in bed? Do you like to have lots of snuggly blankets? Think about the lighting, maybe soft, warm lighting. Can reduce the eye strain, creates a relaxing ambience. What I would say is I use one of those little reading lights, just because it helps me. As I said, comfort, do you like to read in a chair? Do you like to read in bed? Do you like to have cozy blankets? Maybe you like a warm drink, like a tea or a coffee, hot chocolate. That could be part of your routine. And also as well, and I hadn't thought about this, but about the smell, the scent, candles, sensory products, essential oils, or even some music, like some instrumental music. And it mentions lo-fi music in some of the research that I've been doing about this. So that's that music where it's just that very quiet background music. So it's supposed to be non-intrusive, so it can set a peaceful tone. Now, for me, I could have the television on and I could be immersed in my book and not take any notice of the television at all. Okay, but you put a piece of music on, even I have tried some of this lo-fi music, And actually it totally distracts me, so that's not for me. Okay, so I wouldn't pick music as something it's either got to be with the television on or silence for me. So thinking about the mood, setting the mood so that when when you've got that lighting and that cozy space and that warm drink and that smell, that sound, whatever it is that you want, that creates that mood. It sets the scene, it sets the mood for your reading, so your body starts to think and your mind starts to think, actually it's now time for me to do my reading. Then it's about thinking about a consistent reading time. Okay, so thinking about a time that fits in with your schedule. Is it going to be in the morning? So some people like to wake up early and read before they get up out of bed. Some people like to read before they go to bed in the evening. Some people like to read during their lunch breaks. So when is a good time for you to actually say, I'm going to have this as my reading time? And remember, we've talked before about actually, it doesn't need to be a very long amount of time that you're reading for. Just 10 to 15 minutes a day can create that reading habit and start to make reading feel like it's a natural part of your routine. So have a think about how much time you've got, before you get up in the morning, maybe at lunchtime during your lunch break, or early evening, or maybe, if you've got a family and you've got children who come home and you want them to be independently reading, or they're independently doing some homework, that could be your reading time. And it could be, when you go to bed, that you decide you're going to have 10-15 minutes before you sleep for reading. And then, as we've talked about before, about setting ourselves those challenges, having a reading tracker or maybe even a journal where you can log your progress and you can reflect on what you've read, maybe record some of your favourite quotes out of your book that you're reading, maybe, write down what you feel about what you've just read, or, the anticipation of what's going to be happening next, maybe just journal on that as well, so some way that you can actually record what it is that you're reading as well. So far we've thought about setting the mood so our minds and our bodies know that it's going to be our reading time. We've now thought about creating that consistent reading time because we know as well consistency helps to build that habit. So now we need to prepare our mind for reading. And this is one for me, definitely is one for me. It's about minimizing distractions, so actually putting your phone on silent, putting your phone away so you can't even see, you can't even reach it. Because it only needs a little flash, and my eyes are there and I'm totally taken away from what I'm reading. So maybe think about putting your mobile phone away, putting it on silent, switching it off if you want to for that amount of time that you're reading. So it's one less distraction. Or I think you can on your phones, you can put on do not disturb mode, can't you, as well? So you don't get notifications and things. So put that on for your 10-15 minute read. So you know you're not going to get distracted. Okay. Then I thought this is quite interesting. It's about that mindfulness and about that getting yourself prepared and ready, but about taking a few deep breaths. So actually I'm sure we all know, everybody in this group knows actually, though, when you take those first few deep breaths, you can feel as stressed as anything. And those first few deep breaths actually helps to bring you into a calmer, more focused state of mind. And it really helps you, to regulate your breathing, really helps to calm you down. So to do a few deep breaths before you start reading, which helps to calm your mind. So hopefully then you'll be be able to be more immersed in your reading. And then think about, what is it and I've never thought about this, about setting an intention for when you're reading, but actually think about what is it I want to get from my reading today? Is it that I want to just have a relaxing time? Is it that I want to, maybe you're reading something that you're learning from, so I want to learn something new today, or it could be it's a fiction piece. I just want to escape. I want to escape into this world and be in this other world for just 10-15 minutes today. So just think about what it is you want from your reading. So we've thought about setting the mood. We've thought about creating that consistent time and now preparing your mind for reading. So we've done all of those. It's now time to engage with the book. It's actually time to start reading now. And as I've already said, maybe using a journal or even perhaps one of those, you can get bookmarks where you can record the titles of the books that you've read, but somewhere where you can jot down your favourite quotes or thoughts you've had about the book or questions that come up in your mind. You know, sometimes when you're reading, you might think, oh, you know, you think sometimes you think about places when you're reading it and you think, oh, I wonder what it'd be like if, put that down in your journal because it's something you can go back to. Okay. And also, as well, sometimes think about reading aloud. So, as you're reading, just read a passage, a chapter, a paragraph, a page out of a chapter, but read it out aloud because actually reading things aloud can actually help deepen your connection with the text. It can help improve your comprehension. I find that sometimes if I'm, trying to really concentrate and I'm finding that concentration really hard, is if I read something out loud, it helps me actually understand what I'm reading because otherwise my eyes tend to just flit across and skim the text and I haven't fully taken it in. So yeah, that's quite a good one actually to actually, read aloud occasionally as well, and so it'll help you connect with what you're reading. And this one as well, which I read about when I was thinking about how you could create a reading ritual, a reading routine, was about don't rush. Now we all get to those certain points in a book, don't we, where it's like, I need to get to the end. I need to find out what happens. Am I right? I think it's, especially I like thriller books or not thrillers, but like murder mystery type things. And so I think I've worked it out. I think I've worked out who did it. And I want to get to the end to see if I'm right, But this actually says don't rush. Take the time and allow yourself to, as I say, immerse yourself in the book, savor the book, especially if you're reading for pleasure and you haven't got to read something quickly, like that document you've got to read for work that, you don't just read it quickly. But actually, if you're reading for pleasure, take that time to savor it, to immerse yourself in it, and to really take on board, especially if it's a fiction piece, what the author is conveying to you in the language they're using, the scenes that it's helping to create in your mind as you're reading. Take time to be in that, and and just to fully take as much as you can from the story that you're reading. So we've set the mood, we have created a consistent time for reading, we have also prepared our minds for reading, and we've actually started reading now as well. But then you get to the end of your time for reading, and I think I know myself, I finished reading, I just closed my book, I put it down, and that's it really quickly. But actually, sometimes it's quite nice to actually think about what you've read and take a moment to actually think about what you've read, absorb it. It could be the story you've read, it could be the non-fiction bit that you've read, the lesson that you've read, and then actually to close the book quite mindfully. And this made me think about, I know the times I've been in church and maybe somebody's done a reading from the Bible and and then they've actually closed it, but quite mindfully, quite thoughtfully closed it, as if they're thinking about what they've just read. Um, and just closing it really mindfully so that you can actually acknowledge what you've read and absorb it and take it on board before then you go back to what it is you're going to be doing. So if you've been reading on your lunch break, you've actually absorbed it all before you actually then rush back into the office or wherever it is that you work and get on with your busy afternoon. Or, in the morning you've read before you get up out of bed. So think about what you've read before you get up and you get into the daily routine and, the busyness of what all that brings with it. Okay. And then also think about pairing your reading this with another habit. So, like if you have a nighttime cup of tea, or if the first thing you do in the morning is make the coffee and you sit down and you're sitting down with a cup of coffee, or you take your drink to bed, whatever, is actually have that along with it, associate the reading with that other routine. So it actually will then reinforce the habit that you're creating. So actually having that reading routine actually can transform your reading from a passive activity into quite a meaningful experience. And I think for me, and if you're somebody like me who finds that because your concentration is not great that day, actually having that time to get yourself ready to read and then read actually might help with that the concentration, the getting into the reading. So what I'd like you to do, if you're thinking about actually a reading routine would help me, I've got 6 points that you need to think about to create your reading routine. So I'm going to go through these points now. So first of all, think about, when do you feel most relaxed or able to focus? So is it morning, midday, or evening, or just before bed? What kind of reading do you enjoy the most? Do you like fiction, non-fiction, poetry, audiobooks? Where do you like to read? Have you got a favourite chair that you like to, snuggle into and read? Do you like to read outdoors? Do you like to, read when you go to bed? Do you prefer silence, music, or background sounds while reading? Then think about what small habit you could pair with your reading. Could it be drinking your cup of tea? Could it be lighting a candle? Could it be doing some journaling? And then think about how much time you could realistically dedicate to reading each day. So think about those 6 things and think about, okay, and see if you can plan yourself a reading routine. So a reading routine, a reading ritual. So it helps you actually get immersed into your reading and hopefully help actually making that reading into, or turning that reading into a habit more successful. Okay, this is something that I'm going to try. So I answered all those questions and I've got myself a little routine now that I'm going to read when I go to bed. I'm going to read my fiction from my book club. So I read when I go to bed. So it's going to be, bedtime. I'm going to read in bed because I like getting snuggled in under the duvet where it's nice and warm. It'll be silent. Because I say I can't have music on because it just totally distracts me. And then I'm going to have a cup of tea with me because I do like a cup of tea when I go to bed. And then I'm going to look at 15 to 20 minutes a day for reading for me. So that's my reading routine. So I would love to know, first of all, if you think a reading routine would help you. And then also what you would like, what your reading routine would look like. Okay. I will put those 6 prompts in here underneath the video. But yeah, I'd love to know what it is, what your reading routine would look like. So I hope that helps. I hope that with everything else that we've talked about so far in our masterclasses is helping you build up a consistent reading habit and a consistent reading for pleasure habit, because as we know, reading for pleasure is really, really important. So I hope you all manage to get a reading routine that works for you. Have a great month and I will see you in March. Bye for now.